I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo Del Real, once again, here with my partner, Senor Nick Hodge, who's also an investor and publisher of Daily Profit Cycle. This is the 223rd episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. We're going to talk the markets. We're going to talk what we're investing in. We're going to talk about what we're watching this next week. We'll recap Jerome. Jerome has once again spoken. The Trumpster invited everybody to dinner. Aliens in Vegas. Lithium. Quebec. Fires. Patriot. All sorts of interesting things to get to. But before we do that, Mr. Hodge, how are you, senor?
Muy bien. ¿Y tú?
Excelente, excelente. Aquí en Texas.
Oh, it's hot, yeah.
It's a little perky up here. A little perky. You know, they say the heat index is 106, 107. My jog this morning was pretty interesting. I felt like I stepped into the steam room for, a good 25, 30 minutes. So, no, it's good. Like, I happen to love the heat, but I have a really close friend of mine that moved down here about 6-7 months ago. And, he texted me when it was 95 saying that he thought, the heat was going to kill him. And I said, oh, wait till this next week when it hits 106 and it feels like 113. So, two things you can count on in June in Texas: the heat and allergies, right? You're going to have the puffy eyes. You're going to have, the runny nose. But other than that, it's a beautiful time here in Austin, Round Rock, and Georgetown, Texas. Things are well. Everyone's healthy. And happy early Father's Day to you, sir.
Oh, and to you as well, Gerardo. I can attest to the heat in Austin in June. As you know, my daughter was born there in June some 7 years ago. And I remember pacing around the hospital just sweating as it was 100 degrees with a humidity. So I've certainly experienced that, and hopefully you can stay cool.
Looking forward to the heat. I enjoy the summers. Have a family trip to Chicago here soon. Going to pay our annual visit to Wrigley, as we do every year. So yeah. We're going to be all right. It was an interesting week in the markets, and then let's get right into it. Look, it's Thursday, June the 15th. By the time you all get this, I hope all the dads, the ones that are present and involved and do the things their dads are supposed to do, I hope you all had a phenomenal Father's Day and felt celebrated. But, the markets this past week were interesting. Jerome has spoken once again. He said he decided to skip a rate hike this week. He said this meeting he was going to go ahead and skip one, kind of signaling to the market that he's just skipping one. He'll be right back at it during the next meeting. He was very, very intentional in articulating that no one on the committee voted for, a continued pause in rates. And so I think he really tried, unsuccessfully, judging by the reaction of the markets thus far, tried to signal to the market that don't get used to me pausing or pivoting or blinking. I'm just skipping it for now because I have some data that says I can. Whether or not that's true, I always say watch what they do, not what they say. But the markets had an interesting reaction. The Dow today was up 1.27%. The NASDAQ was up over 1%. The dollar index, which had been stubbornly residing around the 104 level, it's closer to 102 than it is 103 right now as we speak. Gold looks like the asset class to own, whether Jerome pivots, doesn't pivot, increases rates again, because if he does, I think something breaks, or starts easing. I think either way, you're going to want to own some gold, and it's holding in there really nicely at the 1960 level. I covered a lot of things there. Let me start with your take on the reaction to Mr. Powell's statement and decision.
I mean, you did a pretty good job. I'm not sure what else to add there. The markets ripped the day after he decided to do his hawkish pause, which is what people are calling it. It's like the Inflation Reduction Act, right? It's a complete misnomer. I think he gets back to hiking. The market is pricing in another hike at the July meeting, not pricing in really any cuts until the early meetings of 2023. And I agree with you. Something's going to break if he continues to hike. Either the further things in the banking market, which we saw some whispers of this week, or things in the commercial lending, credit, and real estate market, or with the government itself as the interest rate payments balloon on the debt. And so I'm of the belief that ultimately it's going to be employment that forces them to pause or cut after a resumption of hikes. And I'm not sure why the market did what it did. I mean, it's a bit of a head scratcher. It's still being driven by this small subset of tech and communication stocks with their AI announcements and inflows coming into these big tech names. So it's a little bit interesting there. When you look at the technicals and some other things, it looks like there's more downside than upside in the S&P still. And yet, as we record this, I think it was like its 6th up day in a row. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's climbing a wall of worry, or the funds and big money doesn't think there's anywhere else to invest, or what it is. But I agree with you that I'm increasingly bullish on gold. I think I was telling you that last week. Gave a little webinar this week on gold, had like 20 slides about it, and lots of different ways you look at it. Correlations are breaking down, typical inverse correlations with the dollar and other things. And gold is holding up really well at support levels, and I think it wants to go higher. We need to obviously get above that $2,000 level. But for me, it was definitely an interesting week, and I certainly didn't expect a 1.5% up day after he told you he was going to hike 2 more times. That was very interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that allocating capital to sectors that have clear trends and are going to do well, regardless of what the Fed does, and regardless of whether or not we're in a recession, or on the brink of a recession, or whether or not China, continues to stimulate or decides to back off and cause a further global recession. I think it's smart to own asset classes right now that don't depend on any of those things. And when I look at uranium, when I look at lithium, we're going to talk James Bay. We're going to talk, obviously, a little bit of Patriot, and we'll talk Quebec here in a little bit. But when I look at these sectors, sure, they'll be hit if we have a global recession that is, a 2008 type meltdown. But just to be clear, I had a subscriber that emailed me personally earlier this week, and he saw a video by someone, that was predicting a 7 to 8 year bear market. And my response was, one, we're structurally better off than we were in 2008, right? Our banking system, liquidity, are we in a good place? No, not in the midterm or the long term. Everything's going to, eventually reset the way we've said for quite some time. But things can stay bullish for a lot longer than it takes to get a reset done. So, my second response to that gentleman was, when's the last time you saw a 7 or 8 year bear market? They don't last that long anymore. So, what does happen is you can get a violent shakeout of the tree, a last shakeout, right? And this rally in the overall indices could be a head fake. It could be a head fake, and we could be on the verge of seeing some numbers that the market really doesn't like. And look, if the tech sector, if the AI companies, as they're calling them now, if they start softening up a little bit, and you combine that with more, recession-like numbers in commercial real estate, in retail, you can see things decouple and break down really, really quickly, especially if that coincides with another hike or two that's more aggressive than the market is anticipating. So I think it's a good time to be cautious in the overall indices with your 401k. I think, me, I'm not a big advocate of holding a lot of cash relative to my holdings. I like my money working for me, and where I have my money working for me is in a lot of sectors that, off the beaten path. Hydrogen storage. We wrote a check for a hydrogen storage company recently. We wrote a check for a company I really like, MineHub Technologies, that I think is one of the few companies in the world that's actually being able to digitize in a very real and meaningful way the logistics and the supply chain that a lot of these companies haven't been able to manage on their own. And I'm talking blue chip companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, the biggest companies out there, right? So anytime I see a small company that has a technology edge, like a MineHub Technologies, and it's got a tiny market cap, and people don't understand the story, I like that. That seems like a good contrarian bet for me. And then, of course, largest holding still Patriot Battery Metals by a lot. It's 90% of my position is still there. It's probably some 75 to 80% of my net worth at this point, but that's just because of the amount that's in there. And so holding tight to that. And uranium. We talked uranium last week, and I got to pound the table again. Uranium is setting up really, really well. And I'm noticing the equities the last couple of weeks finally responding to that trickling price in the uranium space. So again, there's a lot of sectors that I actually like right now that are perking up. that don't care about what the Fed does, even if they are somewhat impacted.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I guess I'll talk more about MineHub Technologies because that's a really interesting deal. And um, starting to hear more about this Inflation Reduction Act and how things are going to have to be, well, first of all, tracked, but also just a much bigger increase in mining of this nickel and lithium and cobalt and manganese. And Europe is complaining now that they're afraid that we're gonna steal investment away from them because we're incenting these things so much. And at the same
And we
time,
are. Be clear, we absolutely are. That's the goal. And he's doing that brilliantly, by the way. He can keep falling and forgetting everything he says. I'm speaking of the president, obviously. But that piece of legislation, as far as that portion of it, is doing exactly what it intended to do. So, not to interrupt, but you know how it goes with me.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And now I'm starting to see these, studies coming out of think tanks and universities, and I think it's dawning on the non-investment class, like, oh shit, like where are all these minerals and refining and purification capacity going to come from? Whether it's for these battery metals or whether it's for uranium. There was a big, NYT New York Times article this week about, how much we still rely on Russia, particularly for the upgraded or processed uranium, right? And this is nothing new to us. I mean, we've been talking about this stuff for years, but the rubber is starting to hit the road because it's getting to be time for, utilities to contract and whatever it is. Like, you can't just talk about these targets and things forever. If you actually want to make them happen, then things have to happen in the mining space. But back to MineHub, that was a deal we financed recently. Offered it to our accredited investors to participate in the private placement. That got done. They recently merged with, one of their few competitors that are in the space. And like you said, they have some really big clients. So what they do is life cycle tracking from basically, mine until finished product, through refining, through smelting, through transportation. You've seen a lot of these stories recently about, disappearing metals or copper ingots that weren't copper ingots, or the nickel's not in the warehouse. And that's just one aspect of it. The other aspect is tracking these different scopes of emissions, right? So there's different tiers of emissions, and it's not just what comes out of the tailpipe of your car or out of the smokestack of a coal plant. It's, what were the emissions to mine that coal? What were the emissions to mine the copper and the metals that go into the batteries? And part of their platform or their hub is meant to or geared toward tracking that stuff as well. And they've got big players, Codelco, for example, which is the Chilean national copper company, and Sumitomo, and some of these big wire manufacturers, et cetera. And their aim is to create sort of a sticky ecosystem, right? Because Codelco doesn't operate in a vacuum. They don't operate in a silo. They've got different partners they work with upstream and downstream. So if you can make it sticky, so the largest player, or one of the largest players, Codelco, is already on board, you can maybe leverage that into getting some additional related clients on, and that's the next phase for them. I say all this because they just closed that private placement, and I expect that they'll be trying to do some moving and shaking on those fronts in the coming weeks. And so I recommended it in the letter also a couple of weeks ago, and I guess good to just give them a little public shout out. But that's a very interesting company, and one I've watched for a while, and it seems like it's finally time to get going there.
No, and it's a deal that you brought to my attention, and after I talked to the chairman of the deal and actually interviewed him on it, I convinced myself that I should have been writing a check on that deal, and did so, by the way. And I may be adding in the open market at these levels. I think it's a heck of a speculation. I think they have a pretty significant technological moat. I think they have, look, the CEO seems to be a superstar. She seems to be very, very clear in articulating the vision and driving the company forward. So a lot to like with MineHub Technologies. That's your free one of the day. I had yet another person that suggest to us that people should be paying for these picks. So we'll see if eventually we have a segment, put it on Patreon, and pay a couple of bucks if y'all think it's worth it. But for now, you get them for free, y'all. MineHub Technologies.
Yeah, just not before the paying subscribers or before we get in, right?
Never that. Never that. They always get them first. And again, you brought that deal to paying subscribers of your accredited investor service, and you brought it to my attention. So I thank you for that. I think that's a check that will multiply and bear fruit here in the coming months and years. We got to talk energy back above 70. Anything to cheer about there? I know the numbers out of China seem soft. I know China's talking more stimulus. I don't bet against China because they're very aggressive when they decide that they're going to loosen banking standards, and they're going to incentivize companies to do different things. They've been very successful at that over the last couple of decades. But anything to watch in the energy space, Nick? You have a better eye for that space than I do, meaning I have zero read on the oil space.
No, I saw that it made a higher low, but I don't have a lot to add there. It was enough to get back on my radar or back on my attention, but I haven't done anything. I haven't bought anything, and come back to me in a week or so, and maybe I will have formed an opinion, but not right now, given the slowing growth, et cetera, that I see. But yeah, definitely noted that it got back above 70.
I like it. We got to talk a little bit of lithium. Obviously, the I don't want to say the main event, but the main event for James Bay plays that are the most watched right now, whether it's the Ophirs, the Q2s, or the Patriots, has been the fires, right, and the restriction on exploration, and that seems, and again, it's June the 15th. That seems to be on the verge, if not already done away with. So it looks like tentatively exploration should be resuming any day now. And I know, in Patriot's case, I just interviewed Blair last week, and, kudos to Patriot with more phenomenal results, right? Again, as I suspected, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But, when I talked to Blair, he was very clear that they kept the rigs on site. They were ready to mobilize as soon as they got the green light. There's literally meetings being had now with several companies that I'm aware of behind the scenes and the government agencies to get some clarity on when they'll be able to actually resume, despite the fact that the burn ban has been lifted in most of Quebec. There's 2 regions that still have fires that aren't fully under control. So that's the update as of June the 15th. It looks like, things are all go. And those companies I mentioned were all up today on green. And Patriots results, 127.7 meters of 1.78%. Lithium at Corvette. I don't know what else you can give to the market outside of everything that's come in the maiden resource estimate and aggressive exploration plan, drills turning again, and hopefully faster processing times on the core with the labs, right? But a lot to like there. I know there's a lot of conversations behind the scenes right now. I had mentioned about a month ago that I speculated in 30 to 45 days a major would come in, take a stake, maybe a couple of majors. I've heard whispers of discussions, but look, I think whether a major comes in or not, whether Patriot goes to 20 or 30 or 40 in the next month or 2 or 3, or it doesn't, the end game on this is not going to matter. There simply aren't that many tier 1 deposits or districts of this scale in the world. And again, when it's all said and done, I think patient shareholders that don't worry about every tick up and every tick down are going to do very, very well. With that being said, Patriot had itself a really good week. Brought in a gentleman that happens to specialize in mergers and acquisitions and commercial negotiations. I don't think the timing on that is coincidental. So we'll see what comes next, but extremely bullish on Patriot. Definitely looking forward to that, and looking forward to exploration in James Bay resuming. I think there's going to be some pretty significant discoveries that turn out there, and the scale of those is what's more interesting to me and the big question mark for me. We know there's lithium, we know there's pegmatites, we know there's spodumene bearing, we know there's scale. How big are those potential discoveries, right? And the benchmark is going to be Corvette. We'll see if any of those can live up to a fraction of Corvette. And if so, there's a lot of runway for a lot of those companies.
Yes. Worth mentioning critical elements as well. So different part of the Lassonde curve, which is interesting. The Patriots and the Q2s are at that early part, right, where they get the ramp because of the exciting exploration and the good drill holes, results, etc. And then where critical elements is sort of on the first downturn of the Lassonde curve, right? The orphan period, it's called, where we've got numbers tied to it, albeit good numbers. I mean, their feasibility study shows
Yeah.
a $1.9 billion project with an 82% IRR. That's 82. And so, it's not a huge project, but it is extremely high grade, and it is fully permitted. And the only such project in Quebec that sits with all those milestones under its belt. But nonetheless, the stock has been soft due to a number of factors, including the softness of lithium prices that we've seen in the first half of this year, although they are starting to turn around, and also the fact that they've yet to announce a financing package. And I say all that to say because what happens after the orphan period is another ramp up in the Lassonde curve, right? Once the financing is secured and we get heading towards construction and initial production. And so they had a very lengthy letter to shareholders out this week from their chairman, and then they were keen to remind people of what I just did, that NPV and that IRR. They were keen to remind people they've got two of the top former executives from Rockwood Lithium, which was sold for $6.2 billion back in the day in 2015. They were keen to remind people that we still have a large exploration package that they expect to find more lithium mines on, not just the Rose project that is permitted. And they were keen to point out that although there's been no deal announced yet, the pace of meetings and the pace of the companies contacting them to, if not enter negotiations, at least to come to the table and have some discussions, is accelerating and not declining. And so, taken all together, it sounds like they're gonna have a package in place later this summer. It seemed like they're doing the engineering, and they said it'll be like 35% complete by August, and so that puts a time frame on it. They said that some of their potential partners were waiting until some of that detailed engineering got done. And so, anyway, another freebie, I guess. We've been in much cheaper for much longer, starting as low as like 29 cents back in 2020, I guess it was.
Yeah.
But that stock was, do I have it up here? How high did it get to?
So 250, right?
292, I think, was the
292.
high earlier this year. Yeah, and it's down to the 160 levels. So I've got a bid in a little bit lower than that. I'd be happy to buy more, but additional catalysts ahead as it negotiates this final financing package, and as it gets back to exploring as well. Now that these fires are starting to subside.
And got to mention Rio Tinto sneaking $65 million into James Bay in a deal with Midland Exploration. It's up to $65 million. It's not $65 million up front, but look, $65 million to Rio Tinto is whatever. It's pennies on the dollar. But I suspect that's not the last check that Rio Tinto wants to write in the James Bay region. So we'll see what follows there. I know that the way that majors tend to think. The other majors are not going to allow a Rio Tinto to get, the stronghold or the first mover advantage as it relates to majors in the area. I think we're going to see an all-out bidding war for a lot of these top-tier assets that, can provide some scale, can provide the kind of returns, that you were citing off there. 82% sure beats buying a treasury bill right now, right? And so, especially with a project that's relatively simple, I know there's some challenges, but it's nothing that can't be taken care of or mitigated rather quickly with some capital. So it should be a fun summer. It should be a fun second half of the year. I've said that often. Look, I'm going to kick back and just kind of watch the portfolio do what the portfolio is going to do. I'm going to let these companies work, and we're going to see if the thesis changes for any of them. But it is show and tell time. I tweeted that earlier. It's, Patriot has the goods. We know that it's just proving up how big this is going to be. The other companies, specifically in James Bay, that are getting a lot of attention, that have, market caps in the 40, 50 million and 100 million, approaching $100 million dollar mark, they're going to have to show the goods. You're not going to be able to take a couple of swings and miss. If they do, they're going back in a hurry. So I like the part when someone gets hit in the mouth, right? I think it brings out the true character of someone if they're looking for a fight. I'm going to like the part where the drills start turning and we start seeing, whether or not they have something. And there were a lot of companies comparing themselves and congratulating Patriot every time Patriot hit. Well, I want to see that continue.
This shareholder letter pointed that out as well. It said, if you have I'm just reading it. If you have a small land package and you're promotionally oriented junior company, you'll drill test any pegmatite poking its head above the landscape in the hope that it's spodumene bearing. That's from the chairman, right? And he goes on
talk to say, that shit, Chairman. Talk that shit.
And he goes on to say, like, that's not how we do things. Like, we're methodically exploring where we're doing it the right way. We have a large land package, etc. So, no, I'm with you.
Look, I will say for that company, and 2 cents, it might behoove you unless you're right at the finish line for getting a financing deal done. It might behoove you to take advantage of this time of the year and go put some holes in a couple of those targets and see if you can demonstrate some more scale. Right? Wouldn't hurt.
Oh, they've got exploration plans for sure.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to those. We can't, I know we covered markets, lithium, uranium, free picks, all of that, but I've been waiting, right? I've been waiting not for this to happen, just to talk about it. I haven't been wanting to talk about the Trumpster because, I think it's a lot of it's a circus. At some point it becomes a circus, and I felt like it became that for so long with everybody doing it for ratings and clickbait and all of that. And so we have something pretty damn material now. He actually got indicted. And when the first thing that happens, I don't care what kind of indictment it is, right? When the first thing that happens is your attorneys, your long-standing attorneys, when the first thing they do is throw you peace signs and leave you out to dry and tell you go find an attorney that'll represent you, and you can't right away, I think the Trumpster's in trouble. And, you can complain, the audience can complain if you're, whatever he calls them now, Magnamites or whatever, Magadonians, I think is what he calls his people now, Trump does, right? Whatever. If
the WWF.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. That's why I hadn't talked about him at all for, I think months on end. But this one looks serious. If you think this is the left and the woke or Bud Light doing this or whoever you think is doing this to him, he looks to have gotten himself in real trouble, and that's not going to change the legal outcome. And remember, this is the president that used to scream law and order. It's somewhat ironic to me that he's on the other side of it. It's not lost on me that his attorneys, and this is why I think they quit in texts that were unsealed, repeatedly begged him to return the documents that the DOJ was asking for, saying, I know you have them. Can you just give them back? And he kept saying, I have this is everything. This is everything. And then to just find them scattered and thrown around in boxes in a closet somewhere in Florida is reeks of ego. And I have no dog in that fight. I don't care if you're Joe Biden, Donald Trump, whoever you are. If you break the law, it is what it is. Some accountability that has to come with that, and it's going to play out. But he looks to be in serious trouble. This one looks serious.
Yeah, there's always a lot of whataboutism, right? What about Hillary's emails? What about Biden laptop? What about this and that? But I'm with you. I read a little bit of the indictment. I read some summaries of it. Certainly took notice that his lawyers hung him out to dry, and his lawyer was telling him basically, this is serious. Like, I need to know that the documents are there. You don't have any documents, right? And Trump was saying no, and then the lawyer went to go investigate, went to go look around, right? And he was like, basically, what the fuck? Like, you still got all these documents here, like they're stored in the shower. And then he was telling the journalist, there were some journalists he was telling about military, classified military plans at a dinner. And so, these charges are real. And what else is interesting is that, like you say, people continue to rally around him. He went and had dinner and gave a little talk that night, and still is the front-running Republican candidate by far. And so it's all very interesting. I think I was reading that these charges carry a maximum sentence of 20 years. Not that I expect him to get that, and I don't know exactly what the implications are for being able to run for president. I have to look into that. But yeah, it's all very interesting as we, head straight into the interesting part of the campaign season. I mean, the election is next year, right? And so this is only going to increase from here. And the media is. Well, the media is the media, but it's interesting that they'll give all these. I'm just going to go away from Trump for a second now. Like these other candidates airtime, right? Like CNN has been having these town halls. Trump got one. I think they announced that Christie is going to have one. But RFK is not getting one, right? And they're going to do the same thing to Kennedy that they did to Bernie in
Yep.
2016, right? I mean,
Yep.
they're not going to let this woman secure the nomination. They've got their man, and so I remain jaded with the whole process and both sides. But it's certainly interesting to watch.
Just a couple of quick tidbits again that just amused the hell out of me. One was you mentioned the dinner that he invited everybody to after his indictment, and he said, "Let's go to the Versailles restaurant, and dinner's on me. I'll take care of it." And then he left 10 minutes before the bill came out and made everyone pay for their dinner.
Of course he did.
And the irony, right? When you're being accused of fraud, when you're being accused of lying, when you're being accused of being deceitful, the irony and the richness in this guy inviting everybody to the restaurant for dinner on him and then bailing without paying the tab is absolutely comical to me. And then the other thing that's really comical to me was there's a video last year of Kid Rock, right? Who's a big Trump fan. And he was talking with Tucker Carlson back then on Fox News. And he was talking about President Trump showing him all these maps. And his actual quote was, "We're looking at maps and shit." And I'm like, am I supposed to be in on this shit? I mean, look, man, you reap what you sow in this world. I wish everybody reciprocity, right? If you have good coming to you, I hope you get all of it in spades. If you've done things that need some cleaning up energy-wise, you got to pay the piper. You reap what you sow. But this is going to be an interesting one to watch. And it's going to be an interesting election cycle. I was somewhat comforted by the fact, and not because I care about either party, but because I don't want, a civil war and I don't want violence in the streets as a result of some politician that I know doesn't care about you people. So I was somewhat comforted that authorities in Miami prepared for 50,000 people to come out and protest Trump being indicted. And I think something like 20 people showed up. And so hopefully people have other things to do, like dodge a recession, dodge inflation, take care and educate and protect their kids, figure out a way to deal with some of the mental health challenges we have in this country. Upward mobility, which was once like the key thing that both parties could, argue civilly about. We haven't had a debate on upward mobility in I don't know how long in this country. I hope we can get back to some of those things, regardless of your political affiliation. And I'll just leave it at that. Interesting times. Fourth turning stuff. I know Neil Howe's got his book coming up here soon. I think, a couple of weeks from now, right?
It's soon. I've seen people posting pictures of it, so some people got some advanced copies, but it's soon. I can tell you if you want to know.
Absolutely. Neil Howe, of course, co-author of The Fourth Turning. I'm really looking forward to reading that new update on that, where we are, what he sees. But
July 18th. July 18th. It says.
There you go. July 18th.
Back to the politics for a second.
Nick's like, I'm not letting this go.
I've been reading about the flags, right? The pride flags, because it's Pride Month, and people have been flying their pride flags, including, I think, the White House had one up the other day with it was in the middle with the two American flags on either side of it, and I was seeing all this uproar, right, from the right about how this is in violation of the U.S. flag code, right? Like the U.S. flag, there's like rules apparently, how the flag has to be displayed, and it's always supposed to be the most prominent flag in the most dominant position, and there's like subsections of the rule. And anyway, I don't know them all, but this is where we're at in the discourse, that people were upset or saying that Biden is not honoring the flag. He's abandoning the flag code and putting the pride flag ahead of the American flag. And I saw this great response, right? Because of course you've seen all the Trump flags with like Trump on the U.S. flag, like which is like you've seen all these different flags, right? The stars and stripes with Trump on it, etc.
He's got a coin. He's got an NTF, NFT.
Yeah. But with the flag specifically, it's like you can't take the U.S. flag and have like the Trumpster on it. That's not like within the flag code, right? But you guys don't care about that part of the flag code. It's just all so asinine.
I look forward to a day again where we can all disagree civilly and still have dinner and still have drinks and just get on with the fact that, you know what, we just don't see eye to eye on that one. Doesn't mean we got to kill each other. Doesn't mean, you know, we got to hurt each other. Doesn't mean we got to burn each other's property down. Let's just have a civil disagreement and work forward to kind of make a more perfect union. Didn't mean to get all cheesy and all patriotic there, but look, it's a great country that's got some great opportunities and also has some great challenges. And I'm super thankful for the opportunities that this country has afforded my family and I. But that doesn't mean that, you know, that comes without criticism, or we can't work to make it better, and we can't, you know, point at things that need fixing, because that's what making a more perfect union is all about. I'd like to announce my candidacy for 2024 president, guys. I'm throwing my hat in the books. What are you watching in the markets this week, Nick?
Oh, I do want to take a look at the energy complex, which we alluded to earlier. Sold my small Chinese position this morning. You mentioned the weakening growth there, and the stocks have actually been doing well, but for the wrong reason. You know, I went into China earlier this year because of the reopening and because of the growth that was supposed to materialize, and here we are, and you've got some numbers starting to come out. There's softness in the housing market, softness in the manufacturing, et cetera, and so the People's Bank of China cut rates this week, a small amount, like 10 basis points or something on their 1 month lending rate. But they're saying there's more stimulus ahead. And of course, right, the stocks are doing better now than when there was actually supposed to be real growth. So the thesis changed. And so, I mean, we made a little bit of money, not a lot, but I sold that Chinese position because I was in it for the real growth, right? Not the stimulant growth. Not that I'm making some big moral stand, but just my thesis changed, and so sold that. But I'm looking for another place to diversify, because I like to have a little bit of diversification in that monthly letter, in that, you know, safe long-term letter. So I'm going to try to come up with some place, and I've been hearing not whispers. I mean, I think even Bloomberg has written about it, but Japan numbers look pretty darn good for the first time in a long time, and so. I guess those two things I need to do a little bit deeper dive on, the energy and the international equities, but nothing super exciting that I'm watching.
I like it. I'll tell you something I'm watching tomorrow. Today being Thursday, tomorrow's the 16th. I've heard whispers of Patriot Battery Metals being included in a couple of Canadian indices, I should say. And so I'm very curious to see how aggressive they are in the buy-up. Obviously, we have tons of news from Patriot here to sit on here for the next several weeks, months, and if it makes it years, though I don't think it will. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see how big of an effect those funds have on the performance of the stock. It's clearly trailed its, you know, Aussie exchange, the Aussie exchange as it relates to performance, right? It seems like oftentimes you get a big 5-6% day down under, and then the following morning it just doesn't translate over on the Canadian side. So that'll be interesting to me. It still hasn't broken new all-time highs. Man, it was close a couple of days, right? It's really flirted with it. It's been within, I think, 60 cents a couple of days in a row, but it looks like it's getting ready to do what it does every time it, you know, flirts with new highs. It breaks through and it gets going. And yeah, looking for assays in the next couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to seeing, hopefully seeing these James Bay plays get back to doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is exploring, not waiting and sitting. Anything to add to that, Nick?
I think you can say both. Indices, vertices. I think it's dealer's choice.
Texas, Texas. I'm supposed to remind all of you to check us out at dailyprofitcycle.com/subscribe to never miss any of our updates, market commentary, rants, ratings, and of course, to leave your comments on all questions, things, us, markets. Love reading the comments, as I always tell you all. So leave them in there. If you have any questions, keep them coming. We love doing this every week. It really is like therapy for us. It's not like we do this for like the YouTube money, or we do it because we don't have other things to do. Nick's got a letter to write. I got some reports I got to get started on. I got a company to vet, a call to get on. So we genuinely enjoy bringing this to you and just sharing our thoughts and hoping that, you know, it furthers your due diligence. So that's all I really got to say on this one. This was episode 223 of our weekly therapy session that we like to call Investing in Bizarro World. Have a great week, everyone. Keep warm out there. Keep hydrated. Be kind to each other. Nick, words of wisdom?
Somebody said last week this is their favorite podcast. That gentleman needs to evaluate his standards.
But thank you.
Hey there, you independent-minded investor. If you like this video, make sure to tell us so by clicking the like button below. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another one. And share it with everyone you know on social media. You can also click the link in the description below to check out more information-packed videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.